The 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 6.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Pellizzaro, and we've got a great show today. Something a little bit different than what we've been doing the past few shows. Mainly 18strong.com, or initially it was started to be, about golf fitness and how fitness relates to your workouts, the guys on tour, that kind of thing. But something that I've really been realizing is how much the mental side plays into the dedication and, the way that people win and achieve things on the course. And so I've really decided that we've got to get some more mental game guys on here and get people that can help you, the golfer, help myself as a golfer, really focus on what we're doing out on the course. How can we keep our attention spans going? How can we, focus a little bit better like the guys that are on tour do? And today's guest, Dr. Bhrett McCabe, is one of those guys. He's a phenomenal speaker. He's actually going to be speaking at the World Golf Fitness Summit in October. And he works with some of the best, not just golfers, but athletes in general. And so in today's episode, Brett's going to give us an idea of what it looks like to work with a player, what it looks like from a player's perspective when they go in and meet with him for the first time. And, what does a sports psychologist do? So he's going to kind of walk us through that a little bit. He's going to talk about getting rid of your expectations out on the course and how having expectations can actually be a detriment to your game. And he's going to describe what he calls the fishbowl mentality, which I thought is a great way to look at the human mind and what we can accomplish. And then he provides, towards the end of the episode, just what for me was a simple mental shift around hitting good shots and bad shots that really can maybe change your plan of attack when you're going out on the course. So, like I said, we've got a great episode here. And before we jump into the episode, I first want to say thank you to everybody out there that has left reviews about the podcast, the people that have sent me Facebook messages, emails, giving me compliments, constructive feedback about the podcast, about the website. So first of all, thank you to all of you guys. We've seen a rise in the downloads and continue to see a steady increase there, and that's a pretty cool thing to see, given that this whole podcast was started, with no experience, and am really kind of learning on the fly as it goes here. So I thank you guys for your constructive criticism. Not always welcome. Just kidding, always welcome. But it's great to learn something new, and I appreciate you guys helping me out with that. And I've had a lot of people ask me how can they help spread the word of the podcast and the website. And the best way is sharing things on Facebook. If you see us posting an article on the website, or a new podcast that comes out, or something on Twitter, retweeting, that kind of things. But the greatest way that you could really help out to get the podcast out there is by subscribing in iTunes. And if you don't know how to do that, please contact me. I'll walk you through it. No big deal. And subscribing in iTunes, as well as leaving a review and a rating. iTunes, from what I'm learning, really looks at the reviews, the ratings, and if it sees that a show is getting a lot of good reviews and ratings and people are listening, they want to show more people. And so that's a good way to get us up in their search engine and, hopefully get some new eyeballs on the 18 Strong podcast and website. So thank you for that. And just like I tell you guys, you always need to have a plan of attack and have some goals. So in regards to these reviews and ratings, I'm going to set a goal of having 100 reviews for the 18 Strong podcast in iTunes in the next 9 weeks. So that's by December 2014. I'm hoping to have 100 reviews for the podcast, which I think would really, get some good eyeballs on the podcast and hopefully get some more people listening and sharing the stories of the great guests that we have on the show and, the different lessons that they're teaching us and what we can do. So I can only do that with your help. So if you have not left a review, I would greatly appreciate it. I'll be indebted to you forever. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Dr. Bhrett McCabe. Thanks again. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 18 Strong podcast. And I have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Bhrett McCabe. Bhrett, thanks for coming on today.
I'm glad to do it.
And the reason I say special guest is Bhrett is actually the first guest we've had on the podcast that is not necessarily from the fitness side of the golf fitness realm, but Bhrett is actually more of a mental game coach, sports psychologist. And so with the 18 Strong podcast and website, what we want to do is really promote, what does it take to finish a round strong? And not necessarily is that always the physical part of it. Not always is it the technical skills, but I would say a ton of that has to do with the mental part of it. And so just a little bit of background on Bhrett. He's a sports psychologist, works with a lot of athletes and teams, especially when they're looking to improve their performance, and especially when they're coming back from injuries. He also works with a lot of coaches that are looking to improve their communication with their teams and the motivation levels and skill levels of their teams. And then also works on the corporate side, working with companies to improve their productivity, get their employees to be more productive, and to reach their goals. But again, another special piece in Bhrett's history is he actually pitched for LSU back in the 90s and was part of 2 NCAA national championships and 3 Collegiate World Series teams, which, Bhrett, I can't wait to hear more about your pitching career and the tie-in to how related that is to golf, what a pitcher goes through and what a golfer goes through, both guys kind of standing there at a still position before having to perform. So
Absolutely.
First, thanks for being here, and I want you to give the listeners a little bit more information about you, even outside the mental game part, just you as a person, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being on. It's funny that what you're talking about is 18 Strong, and you're exactly right. What got me into sports psychology were my own issues on the baseball diamond, and it took me several years to break through and pitch at LSU. It was a program that had a lot of history and a lot of really strong players that came through there. And it took me overcoming an injury, one that you would probably look at and say, oh, that's easy to overcome, but kind of a biceps tendonitis, kind of an impingement in my right shoulder, but for a pitcher, that's very painful. And did the rehab, did all the stuff that they said, and came back in the spring after I had broken the camp in 1993, broken camp as a third pitcher, so it would have been a third starter, and came back and it wasn't going, and every time I threw it hurt, and I started changing my throwing motion to try to accommodate it, and of course that's not a great way to go about doing things, and so it took me a couple years to overcome the injury. I never really achieved the success that I had had before the injury. My velocity was down, and I was on the crossroads of getting ready to quit and just graduate and just say, you know what, I gave it a shot and got hurt, and woe is me attitude, and started working with a guy to help me visualize and relax and see pitching, because I always had this pretty intense fear of success. It wasn't that I was afraid of failing. I was good at that. What I was afraid of was succeeding and then having to have people relying on me in pressure situations in the future. And really worked with this guy, and it ended up being very successful. So while I did not have or possess the physical capabilities that I once had, I ended up having the most success that I could have ever imagined in my last 2 years at LSU, and pitched in the College World Series, and it was just really good, and it taught me the power of the mind. And I realized that you can't always avoid a cortisone shot in the shoulder, but what you can do is learn to adjust to it a little bit better and realize that you're going to have aches and pains, but I still have a job to do. My job is to get this hitter out, and that kind of got me into working with athletes. And being a clinical psychologist, I was trained in working with people who were overcoming injuries, working in physical medicine and rehabilitative settings, chronic pain settings. And I really functioned well in what's called a consultation liaison. You put me in a medical unit, and I was very, very comfortable. So to me, it was a natural transition to go back to working with athletes. And I love what I do, and very fortunate to work with who I work with. I'm the sports psychologist at the University of Alabama. It's not a bad football or athletic department, even though I'm an LSU Tiger. I really like my time there, and fortunate enough to have several players both on the men's and women's ranks on the tour and doing very well. So, there's the old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, I absolutely love what I do, and I love what I do for my work.
That's fantastic. And so, bringing us to present day, working with some of the different tour players, is there something that drew you to golfers? I know you work with a lot of different athletes all over the board, but is there something that drew you to golfers that has brought more golfers into your practice, or is that a passion of yours?
Well, it's funny. All athletes want to be rock stars. All rock stars want to be athletes, and everybody wants to be an actor. As a baseball player, as a pitcher, our relaxation was going to the golf course. I'd been playing since I was young, and at the time, baseball was always my passion, but golf was kind of the thing that I did just to get away, and never really played competitively, just enjoyed it. But as my freshman year at LSU, as soon as practice was over, we'd all hit the golf course and we'd play until dark, and then go to weights and then do our homework. And when fall season was over, we would play. As soon as we could eat at the cafeteria, we'd be on the golf course and play as much golf as we could. So I was always fascinated with it and loved playing it. When I got done, I'm a avid golfer now, but when I got done with school and was doing all that, I was out at the country club one day at my club in Birmingham, and the instructor at the time said, "Hey, look, I got this player here I'd like you to work with," and worked with her, and she was on the Futures Tour or whatever it was called back then, and then that just led to one to another to 5 to 10 to 15 to players that are very successful today and amateurs, and I always kind of just accepted the fact that, look, I'm not a golfer. I don't come from your world. I enjoy the game. I try to play as much as I can. Both my daughters play, but there's something that can be learned from taking the training of a baseball player and applying it to golf. And I think maybe the way that I look at the game is a little bit different. I'm not a softy, touchy-feely, everybody be in your happy moment and go play golf. I want players to get better by the way that they train. I want players to get better by actually committing to it and saying this is what they're going to do, and maybe taking those lessons of playing for a Hall of Fame baseball coach and a 5 national titles in 6 years type of guy has been beneficial, and maybe being different has helped me.
And I kind of alluded to this earlier on, but with you being a pitcher and pitching at such a high level, how would you compare that to, golf is so much different than most other sports because everything's very reactive, and you get to stand over that little white ball and it's just you and the ball and you're hitting it. And to me, it seems like pitching would be very similar, where you've got total control from the start of your motion to throwing that ball over the plate. Obviously, there's another guy that's waiting to react at the other end. But as far as your own personal performance, how would you relate the two? Are they very similar? Do you work with athletes very similarly in those two situations?
Yeah, the three positions or the three sports that I think are the most identical or the most similar are a baseball pitcher, a golfer, and a field goal kicker. And I have a large number of those athletes in my practice. The reason for it is that you initiate the action. And not only that is because you initiate the action and the failure is seen as so immediate, there's really nobody to bail you out. I mean, ground balls, I get it as a pitcher, but you have to impart your will upon what you're trying to accomplish as a pitcher. The mental game plays such a valuable role, and there's some mechanical similarities between the three too, which I think helps out as well. But that being said, working with pitchers to understand how to play a strategy. As a pitcher, you don't throw your strikeout pitch on the first pitch. The hitter won't swing. So you have to set them up. Well, golf's not much different. You don't throw your birdie on your drive. You have to find the time to strike. And when you strike, you better be ready to strike. And that's what I try to get with athletes to understand. But those three things are very, very similar. It's all about understanding kind of what you're aware of in your feelings, creating a strategy, executing it, and then managing the results.
Now, in regards to what you do, working with the individual athletes and, working with them on the mental side, I find that initially, especially with some of the younger golfers, the mental game or sports psychologists, a lot of them don't really understand what it is that you do and what you would do to work with them and how that can improve their game. In fact, I think some of them even have kind of a negative mindset towards, what is it? Is it kind of a touchy-feely kind of a thing? Are you going to, are they going to come and lay on your couch and just talk about their feelings and their past, that type of thing? Or can you give us an example of what does it look like when a player comes to work with you? And then also, what would you find to be one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about what you do?
Well, let me start with the misconceptions first. I'll give you a couple, and it's a soapbox moment for me, so I apologize in advance. But the truth of the matter is, very few sports psychologists are actually psychologists. who are licensed by their state boards. It doesn't take anything to call yourself a sports psychologist, because if I'm not applying for licensure, the state has no ability to censor me. So you've seen a little bit of a change to people calling themselves mental game coaches now. But a true psychologist is somebody who is licensed by their state, reports to an ethics board, has demonstrated competency in a therapeutic area or clinical area or counseling area or school area, and then goes forward. And unfortunately, the word sports psychologist has been around for long enough that it's like saying you're a therapist. Well, what kind of therapist are you? Are you a physical therapist? Are you a massage therapist? If I just call myself a therapist and I'm not, going to any kind of licensing board, well, the misconception is to the clientele is they call me and they say, well, I saw so-and-so for a sports psychologist and, they did the assessment, and then I look up their credentials and they have a master's degree in communication. It scares me to death. And I think you would understand that in the field that you're in and the expertise that you have is that there has to be checks and balances, and it's been a pretty poor job. And in fact, there's a lot of folks who have PhDs and all the power to them in kinesiology with a specialization in sports psychology, but they're not licensed. They're not trained to do counseling. They're not trained to do assessment. So it's a pet peeve of mine just simply because we have to protect our field, because like the clients I've had who've come to me and said, so-and-so gave me this advice, and I'm thinking, ooh, that's a little risky. Now, okay, soapbox moment, I'm protecting my field. I get that, and I apologize. But I'm sure you go through the same things in your field.
You got to do it. I totally agree with it.
So from a public standpoint, the other thing that gets me as a misconception is that, mental game coaches, an LPGA player was texting me this last night, and she said, what makes you different? I don't know if she was trying to flatter me, but I took it and I was flattered. But anyway, she was saying, so many people in the mental game, they give you the quick fix, but they really don't have anything else behind it. So that a lot of times they're one-hit wonders. They've got a little shtick to them. They may dress funny. They may have a very motivating way of talking about themselves. And they can connect to the player and give them some solution and shine a light on some darkness. But then after a while, it kind of goes away. And so I have to fight that all the time in my field. So what I do when a client comes to see me is I say, look, first of all, you don't need a psychologist in order to play well. You've come to me and I'm not providing you therapy. I'm not doing diagnosis. But what you're asking for me to do is to be a resource to help you remove the distractions, remove the internal dialogue that is hampering you, to help you identify ways to prepare and perform that under pressure you perform at your best. And in order to do that, I need to get an understanding of the way you think, the way you learn. I want to understand how you interact under pressure. So kind of building a model for them to say, okay, it's not a one size fits all. It's each athlete that comes in the room and meets with me is a different, unique entity. So I really want to work with them to find the plan that works best for them. Once we do that, then we lay out a plan, and I try to make it pretty time sensitive. I don't feel like players need to be in this long-term setting, particularly younger athletes. A lot of times they're there's a very specific reason as to why they're seeking my services. It might be not being able to communicate with their coach, dealing with pressure when they step in the batter's box. They may have the yips on the putting green. So one of those, and I'll identify what those are and work with them. So the misconception is that, find the people who are trained appropriately, which I hope to think that I am, but at the same time, establish a plan that is very constructive, and it's very specific to what they're trying to do, and it's just not soft. Sure. There, soapbox. I'll step off my soapbox now.
No,
I apologize for that.
No, absolutely. I think that's great. And what the listeners here, most of them are not professional golfers. Some may be, some may not. But I think anybody listening to this podcast, anybody that listens to a golf fitness podcast, loves the game of golf, knows that they want to improve, and they're looking for ways to get themselves better, whether that be with nutrition, with workouts, with practicing on the putting green, the driving range. So I really want to make sure that those people, that they can take something away from today and look at their mental game and how they're performing out there mentally. What's one thing, or what are a couple of the big things that you see the average golfer, the guy that goes and plays Saturday and Sunday mornings at the country club, what are the things that they struggle with, and maybe a couple tips that they could quickly turn around and use tomorrow when they go out to play?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I agree with you. I think that we have we sometimes forget that from an instructor or coach standpoint, we're not trying to recreate the wheel. We're just trying to help a player play better. And not everybody has the time to rebuild their swing. They were not the $6 million men or women. So I think the first thing that you can do is the simplest, easiest thing to do is to really listen to your internal dialogue. Many of us play from what I call a need mentality, which is I need to make this putt, I need to hit this green, I need to hit this down the left side. And what that's doing is really highlighting the impact and the negative outcome of what those consequences would be, as opposed to saying, what do I want to do? You're out on the golf course to execute golf shots, not play away from trouble. So imagine if Kobe Bryant came down the basketball court and said, I need to make this shot. It's different than I want to make this shot. And I want a player at the end of the game that says, I want the ball because I want to make this shot. And the need versus want changes us from a mentality of protection to a mentality of achievement. And so when you stand on the driving range and you go out on the first tee, first thing that people think is, okay, I hope I have a good day today. I hope I can bring what I had on the range. I need to get this first one in play. Change that internal dialogue and say, you know what do I want to do? I want to hit this ball down the right side, and it'll give me the best angle into the pin. And actually really work standing over a putt. I want to make this putt versus I need to make it. That's the easiest fix. The other things, too, is to really understand that golf is a game where there's going to be mistakes, but it's how you mitigate those mistakes, and it's how you control the emotions that go with it that's important. So lower your expectations. There's no reason to have high expectations. I think everybody who's sitting here on a Thursday or Friday or Monday or Tuesday is going to play the next day is going to sit there and say, man, I hope tomorrow's that day I shoot 68, or I hope that's the day I should break 80 or whatever. How about just go out there and play the next shot with all you got, and then let's add them up at the end.
I was kind of doing a little bit of research over the past week and reading through some of your blog posts, and one of them that I really, really liked was it talked about playing from the wrong side or thinking from the wrong side of the bell curve. And you talked about having a player who struggled, and it sounded like they focused a little bit more on their poor shots. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? And I know it may have caught you off guard with throwing out an older blog post, but
no, it's one that I talk about quite often. So I believe that all human behavior functions along a bell curve, which is a normal distribution. And what that means is if you think about the curves, they're very small on the ends and thick in the middle. So it looks like a hump. The middle is, if we follow that belief that it's a normally distributed, means that your average is going to be the most frequently occurring score. Your median, if we take all the numbers and move them, all your scores from left to right, that's going to be in the middle. The mode, which is the most frequently, so it's the average, and it's all those are together. But what happens is, let's say my average is an 80. And I go out and play golf and I shoot a 90, I'm very unhappy. And if I shoot a 70, I'm very happy. If I shoot a 90, I want to change everything. If I shoot a 70, I want to buy drinks for everybody. But they're both the same statistical outcome. So when we think about it like that, you say, okay, why would I change something that was bad if I don't change something that's good? Well, to take that to a whole nother step is, if I go out on the golf course and I try to prevent the big number, the one side of that curve, it's very hard for me to play my best because I'm trying to prevent bad from occurring. And so what happens is that average becomes more chaotic because I'm never really scoring. I'm trying to prevent numbers from occurring. And that's the challenge. So playing to the bell curve is you have to be honest with yourself and say, look, I average an 80. That's what I am right now. And I need to either get better by doing more work, or I need to go out and change my mentality to say, look, an 80 is an 80. Don't be upset with an 82. It's near your average. Okay? But work to play and understand and be honest with yourself of what you truly have to offer.
Yeah, it seems like so many times we go out and, myself, I don't by any means consider myself a great golfer. I actually don't even keep an actual handicap. But, we hit an errant shot and it's like, oh my gosh, how could that have happened? But then again, I haven't practiced for a month. We haven't gone out and putted 100 balls or gotten the sand trap and started working on that stuff. And so when I shank one into the water, for me to get upset and focus on that shot just, to me, kind of seems a little bit silly. So I think that's a great point for all the listeners out there, that when you hit a great shot, you mentioned this in your post, when you hit a great shot, you don't look at your swing and say, man, what did I do, and how, why was that so good, and should I not change something, or should I change something? But when you hit a bad shot, you're analyzing every single little piece of that swing. And I think that's kind of funny that if we go the one way, we're analyzing and changing everything and, finding a new swing instructor, but you go the other way and you just kind of chalk it up to your natural ability.
Well, and it's funny too, the other thing that we do is we get relieved. And relief is a very bad emotion to have, because it means you're avoiding something that you fear. Think about that. So when we play good, we feel relief. We hit a good shot, we feel relief. Well, that tells you what's going on, is that your fear is guiding your decision-making in your play, as opposed to feeling accomplished. I want you to hit a shot and go like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. I want you to be like, and it doesn't mean you're playing stupid shots, but it's that you're trying to hit good ones. And you should feel accomplished. But if you feel relief, like, oh, there, phew, well, you just told yourself that more's coming. So what are you so afraid of?
Right. Having a little bit of that confidence when you're stepping up. I know in any sport, I played soccer in my past life, but when you have confidence and you go into that game knowing that you've put in the time, you've prepared yourself, and you kind of expect those things to happen, as opposed to, oh man, I hope I don't screw this up. Well, let me, and I'm going to change your vernacular there a little bit, because I don't want you to expect anything. I want you to know that you're prepared and be ready to go compete. Because expectations, what happens there is, well, I prepared well, therefore I should play well. Well, no, there's no guarantee. You prepared because you invested in you. Now you have an opportunity to go compete. And what I try to get players to understand is, it's like walking into a heavyweight boxing match. When you step in that ring, you have to look back at your training and trust that you did the training that got you in this position. Now you have to go fight. And you're going to get bloodied, and you're going to get shot, and you're going to get punched in the eye and the head and the side. But when the guy or the woman who raises the belt at the end, nobody says, congratulations on the victory, but man, you sure are ugly. They go, congratulations, champion. And so that's why I don't want them to have any kinds of expectations, because I don't want any added pressure of, I trained, therefore I should. I want it to be, I trained because I invested, now I'm ready. Sure, that makes perfect sense. Another topic that I heard you discuss, actually with our buddy Jason Glass on the Coach Glass podcast. And if you guys haven't listened to the Coach Glass podcast, I believe it was episode number 9. Go ahead and do that. Is there another one coming up?
Yeah, I think it's going to be released in the next week or so.
Oh, fantastic. So by the time this podcast actually releases, that one will probably be live already. But go ahead and listen to Jason over on the Coach Glass podcast, because he is one of my favorite individuals in the golf fitness world. I think he's hilarious. Cool, great guy. He is. Yeah. But you talked about the idea of the fishbowl mentality and breaking the fishbowl mentality. Can you go a little deeper into that?
Absolutely. So something that kind of hit me, I was working with an athlete one day, and they were talking, and I was like, it's funny. We all place boundaries around ourselves. And I started thinking it was, and it just kind of came to me. It was like, human beings are no different than goldfish. If we go to the store and go to Walmart or go to the neighborhood fair and throw a ping pong ball into a cup of water, we win the goldfish. They put it in a plastic bag. You go home, you put it in a 2 or 3 gallon tank, and that goldfish will live forever as long as you feed it and change its water. You never hear anybody go to PetSmart and say, oh my goodness, that thing outgrew it. And instead, the goldfish acclimates what they eat to live into their bowl. Well, if you put it in a bigger tank, it does grow bigger. And if you put it in a backyard pond, it becomes a koi fish. So particularly if it's outside of a hibachi restaurant. So the human mind is no different. It only grows to the size of the boundaries it's placed upon itself. So if a person doesn't believe they're going to be anything, well, you know what? They're going to prove that. And so we have to break our own fish bowls and stop putting those constraints and those barriers around us, which are those things that are based on fear, and saying, oh, I can't. Instead, say, I don't know. And it takes an ultimate sense and investment in being vulnerable in order for that to happen. And that vulnerability is very, very difficult to to let down of all those things that we're afraid of and instead go, you know what? I am willing to fail in order to be great, but I want to be great as the most important thing. So I have to give up the fear of what would happen if I fail. So I have to break my fishbowl and say I'm willing to swim outside these constraints. And it's tough. It's very tough.
How would you relate that? Because obviously with the Golf Fitness Podcast, we want to relate the mental side of this, not just to the golf game, but also to tie it in with the workouts that our guys and girls are doing in the gym. And sometimes I feel that, the average golfer comes in, they almost feel like they come in once, twice, 3 times a week, whatever it might be. And okay, I came in, I did my duty, I saw my trainer 3 times a week, and they kind of feel like that's enough to say that they did what they need to do. How does that fishbowl mentality tie in with that type of golfer coming into the gym with that type of mentality?
Well, it's a couple things. One is a lot of times players tend to sabotage themselves. And what I mean by that is they will not – it's hard to really say I did all this work and I still didn't reach my goal. That's a really hard position to be in because if ultimately it comes back to, well, why didn't I get there? So a lot of times players will stop early. They'll quit coming. They'll stop exercising. They'll stop whatever so that they have a built-in excuse, which means, you know what, I missed my goal. But, I didn't really work out that hard, and I didn't really invest 100% of it. I'd rather them say, look, let me control the things that I can control. I'm going to work out hard. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to practice. I'm going to do the drills. I'm going to see my swing coach. I'm going to go play. I'm going to try not to go out drinking the night before and then show up at 8 o'clock and wonder why I didn't play well. All those things that we as amateur golfers do, instead of just saying, you know what, I'm here to play. I'm going to enjoy it. I've done everything that I can up to this moment. Now, how I play is not the same thing, meaning it's not a guarantee. It's an opportunity. And that vulnerability is tough.
Absolutely. I think that, sometimes they come in and they feel like they are there for the right reasons, but almost, as you said, sabotage themselves and don't give themselves enough credit that they can push themselves a little bit more. They can try a couple things to make themselves a little bit better as opposed to just kind of running through the motions or, taking that extra step. And so I want all of you listeners out there to take a second, look at your own workouts, look at your practice sessions, and are you really doing those things to get you to that next level? Or are you just running through the motions and saying, I did my workouts and I'm ready to go. So
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, Dr. McCabe, I want to put you on the spot a little bit here. We like to do this on the podcast here. So, as we said, so much of the fitness part of athletic preparation is mental. What's one thing that you personally struggle with in your own fitness goals, and how do you then deal with overcoming those?
That's a great question. I'll give you 2 things. One is the first one is actually invest in the time in me to do it. And what I mean by that is I know what it took to be in shape from when I played. And I always worked out from a stance of being, there was a function to it as opposed to a vanity. So I've never been able to work out just for saying I'm working out. I don't enjoy it. I'll be honest with you. I just never enjoyed it. I enjoy it when I get in shape, but the process to getting in shape is not something I enjoy, so I avoid it. So therefore, you don't see me in the gym very often. And then I obviously feel bad about it, and then I get frustrated, and then I start it, then I stop it. So that's the first one. The second thing is, I'm not a big fan of pushing myself mentally to the limits with regards to the physical. What I mean is feeling that moment of, and I guess it's probably having some exercise-induced asthma and having a difficulty time catching my breath a few times. I'm not one of those guys that likes to feel my heart beating out of my head, whereas my wife is that person. When we're doing exercise together, when we're doing it, she loves that feeling of just about absolutely heart pounding out of her head. I don't. So I'm really good at throttling myself back, and I wish I had the capabilities to go harder. When I get feeling good, I can, but I'm really good at avoiding it and coming up with excuses. So pure self-disclosure. Now, I know all the research. I know what it takes, 15 minutes a day, just get started, blah, blah, blah. Well, do as I say, not as I do.
Right. Right. And do you feel that it's important for the athletes, especially the very competitive ones, for their trainers, their coaches, and even for themselves personally to to push themselves to that limit and find where that limit is when they are training?
Well, of course, I don't think you can ever know where your limits are until you're willing to push them. And you got to be willing to fail sometimes too. But through failure, we find the skills necessary to go further. Now, it has to be done in a safe environment with a trained professional. So a lot of times I want my strength coaches to create failure-based drills where the player must fail. They don't know it's a failure-based drill. The player doesn't. But there's a drill that maybe, they have to do, and there's no way in their first attempt they're going to ever make the time. But over time, they'll get it. And they have to learn how to beat the game. Now, I don't mean inappropriately beat the game. I mean figure out what it takes. So there are times where there's a day where you just don't succeed. Can you handle that? Can you accept that but be more motivated? Or do you see that as something that pushes you to the point of quitting and losing faith in yourself? Well, if you can't handle that resiliency, then that's something I got to know. Because if you, under the first sign of worry, you go, I'm out, that's something really, really to learn about.
And I think that ties in perfectly with kind of the theme of 18 Strong. Being able to finish that last hole, your 18th hole, drain that putt and know that you put everything out there mentally, physically, preparation-wise. Can you give us an example, and this could be of one of your players, or this could be just somebody that you've observed on the tour, or even, at the club, that exhibits what you would consider to be someone who finishes 18 strong consistently?
That's a good question. So, I think if we were to historically look, I think Tiger was probably one of the greatest finishers we've ever seen. When he was confident, he had an aura about him and he knew where he was going to be. He never tried to be a Superman in that time. He just could really hit some exceptional shots. I'm very fascinated by other sports and guys and finishers. We've talked about LeBron James not being a finisher for years, but yet I think he is a pretty good finisher. I think Kobe Bryant's one of the best finishers there is in basketball. From a baseball standpoint, looking at a starting pitcher who could go out and finish or be a stopper, I think is fascinating. Mariano Rivera, the best ever, as being a closer, a stopper, somebody who teams on a losing streak can go out there and reverse that trend. And right now there's some excellent pitchers in Major League Baseball that are doing that. From a golfer standpoint and finishing strong, I think we have to look at somebody like a Steve Stricker who's been around forever. I think he finishes quite well. I think golf is so unique to being a finisher. My thing is, let's look at the consistency of continuously being up on top of the leaderboards. That's a finisher to me, because there's a lot of times during the course of that round where that player probably had a choice to kind of say, today's not my day, but they fought through it. Yeah,
and one guy that kind of stands out to me these days, and I think it probably stands out because he's so young, is Jordan Spieth, just kind of going time and time again and just playing so well and kind of overcoming a lot of different things. So he always kind of sticks out in my head as one of those guys.
Yeah, and Jordan's got a pretty good perspective on life. And if you know his family history, and I know it's been well documented, but had a chance to sit down with his coach for a while and have dinner one night and talk about this back in January. And he just said, Jordan is a kid who's very much into achieving what he wants to achieve versus being afraid of where he stands. And the biggest mistake that people make is they try to be validated. So as opposed to being accomplished, and I want them to be accomplished.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to interview Damon Goddard, Jordan's fitness trainer, on the last episode of the podcast. And, he just told some good stories about Jordan and his mentality and how he's able to visualize and just kind of put things into perspective, which I think is so neat as a young man to be able to do that. I wish I could say that I had those talents then and now, just being able to put things into perspective, I think is fantastic. Yeah,
it's necessary. Absolutely.
So, Doc, let's focus things a little bit on you and what you guys are doing at the MindSide. What is one thing that you are very excited about that's going on with you, your company, your business, and everything going on down there?
It's good. It's my company is called the MindSide. It was started to do looking at sports and performance consulting, and also working with organizations, and I've gone through some changes in my organization out of desire. I started it, and it was a little bit more corporate feeling, and I've scaled it back to it's just me and my wife, and business is even better than ever, and revenue's great, and so I enjoy it. I can go to my kids' golf and do that. So what am I doing? In October, I'll be speaking at the World Golf Fitness Summit with the TPI group, so I'll be out there. So please come and check that out. So I'm honored to be on the list of great speakers. I don't know if my name is on the website yet, but that's a done deal. And, just doing some writing and trying to get some things squared away and just doing my work for my clients. I enjoy doing what I do and love being out on tour, love being at Bama. I love doing the things to see my clients be successful. I'm one of those guys that I like to kind of stay in the background a little bit, and I like to see the success of my players and, kind of keep a low profile. Even though I like to do radio stuff and TV, I still like and enjoy the nature of staying in the background and letting them do their job.
Sure. So lastly, if there's one final piece of advice that you can give the audience, something they can take with them again, that they can implement tomorrow, or just one piece of wisdom that you can share with us, what would that be? And then let everybody know where they can find you, and we'll put all the information up on the show notes page as well.
Absolutely. So I think the easiest thing for people to do is to put it into proper perspective and understand that the game is a game to be played and enjoyed, not a game to punish yourself. There's a lot of ups and downs of emotions. There's disappointment, there's excitement, but you don't have to make it life or death. The game does not do best when it's constricted by a boa constrictor. Instead, play, go achieve, and try to make things happen, meaning go achieve them. It's like hunting, go make birdies, go make pars, and be excited about them. Don't be relieved about them. Feel the excitement, love the excitement, and that's the best way. I think the easiest way to get in touch with me and to follow me is actually on Twitter. I'm a big Twitter fan. You can follow me at Dr. Bhrett McCabe. My name is spelled differently. I spell it with an H, so it's DR, and then the Bhrett is spelled BHRETT, and then McCabe, MCCABE. So give me a follow, hit me up on Twitter. I love to talk on Twitter and go about that.
Fantastic. And like I said, everybody, you'll be able to find all of Brett's information, his website, his Twitter handle, and everything on the show notes page at 18strong.com. Bhrett, can't thank you enough for coming on, taking the time to share with us. And definitely, when I get out to the World Golf Fitness Summit, I'm going to check out your presentation. Hopefully, we can maybe grab a cocktail or so afterwards.
Absolutely.
At some point.
And I told my wife I got to go on a massive lifestyle change now because I can't be the fatty up there talking in front of everybody. So,
well, you'll have quite a few fitness guys around there to give you plenty of tips and advice.
Yeah, I got to answer to Jason Glass because he's been on me for about 6 months. So,
absolutely.
So anyway,
well, thank you very much, and we will talk to you soon.
You got it. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Hey, everybody! I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to that interview with Bhrett, which I think was a great one and was chock full of tons of great information that you can take with you tomorrow when you're on the course and really kind of change the perspective of, what your mental mindset is going out on the course and playing your next round of 18. Bhrett, just as a recap, gave us a great glimpse into what it looks like to work with a sports psychologist. What do they do? What can they do for somebody's game? And the fact that it doesn't have to be the professionals that seek out these guys. If you're somebody looking to improve not just your golf game, but the way that you approach your practices, your training, somebody like Bhrett can really get you on the right track and help individualize, what are your needs and what are the focuses you need to take with you. And then he also gave us a great way of changing our outlook on why we're on the course and getting excited about playing and hitting great shots as opposed to going out there and punishing ourselves for, hitting a bad shot or making a mistake, changing our expectations or really getting rid of our expectations as he talked about and getting rid of the idea of being relieved when you hit a great shot as opposed to being super excited about it and celebrating that. And then one last take home that I really thought was important is the fact that along the lines of getting rid of your expectations, you can't expect things to happen because when you go out there, you have to kind of roll with the punches. But accepting the amount of effort that you put in before that, in your training, in your practice, in your prep time, and accept the fact that either I did everything I could to get ready for this match or this game, or I didn't, and that's fine if you didn't. But you can't go out there expecting to win everything and expecting to hit 100% of great shots when you didn't put the time in the gym and you didn't put the time in on the putting green, the range, the bunkers, all that stuff. So just managing your expectations and as Bhrett says, getting rid of them, to be honest. As you guys know, you can find all the information of Bhrett, everything that we talked about in the show, all the links that we talked about, to his Twitter, his Facebook. You can find all that stuff on 18strong.com, and specifically you can find it at 18strong.com/Bhrett-McCabe, and that's spelled Bhrett, and McCabe is MCCABE, which you'll see on the website. And as always, look us up on Facebook, connect with us, check out our page, tell us who you want to get us to get on the show, and let us know what questions you want us to ask. We're always here for you, looking to give you the best information and get some of the greatest content providers on here. So as I know Bhrett is a big Twitter user, so we love always finishing 18 Strong with a hashtag of 18 Strong, but in Brett's case, let's go with a hashtag of the MindSide, which is his business and basically his philosophy on approaching the mental side of not just golf, but all athletics. So thanks again. Share it with your friends, and hope you guys come back soon. Don't forget, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.